So I've heard wonderful things about John Byrnes for many years, and have never really had the pleasure of meeting him really until today. We met via Zoom to do a radio recording, and that's posted on the Mediatrix app for Catholic Radio in South Carolina, and there's a short piece that runs periodically throughout the year with that portion of the interview with him, and it was a delight to have that conversation. John is a native of Elizabeth, New Jersey, but most importantly, he is the husband of Sally, who he married 36 years ago, and they've been blessed to have a daughter, Erin. He's a lifelong Catholic and a product of Catholic education. He currently has been a member of Christ Our King in Mount Pleasant. And of course, he's had a very business career. He's worked for a number of international corporations and is the owner of Express Employment Professionals, which is a staffing firm based in Mount Pleasant, but serves throughout the Charleston region. John is the president of Stella Maris Christ Our King Elementary School, which I didn't realize was the largest Catholic elementary school in the diocese. And he's also the president and a founding board member of the Legatus group here in Charleston. And Legatus is really an international leadership organization that brings business leaders together as Catholics to strengthen their faith, fortify their faith, and to support the church in its mission. So I am delighted and privileged to have this opportunity to introduce John Byrnes. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank. First, thank you everybody for being here, but also thank you for making your Catholic faith so prominent in doing these things and doing the things to go out there to make sure that in our business lives and where we are all together, that we understand that it's, one, it's okay to be Catholic, and two, that it's something we should be talking quite prominently about as we go about. This is usually the time that a speaker will say, oh, thank you for that wonderful introduction, but I always laugh whenever I hear that being said, because 99.9% of the time the person that's speaking wrote the wonderful introduction that they got, so just realize that I'm not going to go that route today. I think when I think of our Catholic faith, I think of it as, and what's changed a lot, because when I grew up, it was all about what are we going to do for others, right? And now the world is all about me. And I think that is, we're missing a significant part of where we can go as a Catholic faith, as an organization, as a country, by changing that outward look again, so we do it. And where I learned all of that was from family, right? When we were growing up, in education they talk about modeling, but in what we talk about when we think about it in other ways, it's really, who are your role models? And my family was a role model. As I said, I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey. I'm one of 9 children in my parents that had, and I'm number 7, which was the youngest of 5 boys. I don't recommend when you're growing up to be the youngest of 5 boys, because it does not fare well. But as my parents would say, if you want them to stop, just ignore it, right? So that's how you would deal with that. So, but I think the thing that they instilled in all of us was faith, family, and service to others. So how that worked growing up, it was little things, but you see, my father was a coach, my mother was a den mother. They would, when back in the way it used to be, which I kind of am a proponent of, the Catholic bishops had that you should build the school first, and then the church would be the second thing that you built. So you established that. And when I don't know if I was actually, I could have been in my mother at that time, but I don't remember anything about it. But I know when they built the church where we all went to school, my parents were the ones that went door to door to door to door to door in the whole community, asking that people would donate money so that they could build the church. Another thing that happened in our family is every Saturday we went to my grandmother's house. She would take us across the street to St. Patrick's Church, and she'd take out the butter knife and we'd have to, all the kids would be on the church floor getting all the wax off the floor that came from all the candles that were being built, and that was our thing. But it wasn't a drudgery for us. It was, we didn't know any better. That's what they told you to do, you went and did it, right? So, and you did those types of things. But that's one part of my parents of having set that for us. The other part is both my parents worked. How they found time to have 9 kids is in itself something. But I'm actually named after Father John Michael Ballweg, who was the priest that advised my parents that birth control was not the way to go after having already 6 kids. But so they figured they'd pay him back and named me after him. The other thing that they would do is they did all these things, and now you figure with all the sports we played in our family, the boys were all played baseball, basketball, we did all these things. We had other things that my sisters would do, but it didn't matter where we were with that number of kids. Every member I have of a sporting event, one of my parents was there. I don't know how they did it, but that was what. So what they were was, even though they had all this going on, the thing that they always were was present. And when we see today's parenting that goes on, where it's the same situation, both parents may be working, that's what they've chosen to do, but I'm not so sure they're present when they come home, because either they're too tired or they have other things to do. And instead of the jockeying the kids back and forth to all their sporting events, you need to spend time as a parent and be a parent. So, and I think that's one of the things that I will always remember. And I did that with Erin when, I'll skip a little bit, but our dog, when I worked for a company, I went to do an acquisition over in London, England. It was in the brokerage industry, a software company. And when my background was in finance and accounting, and when I came back and wrote the report about the target company, one of the things came out was that the finance group was weak, and it wasn't up to the standard that we needed to be. Had I known better what I know now than then, I wouldn't have written that, because they said, "Ooh, you can go over there and fix it." So we spent 5 years over there, but during that time is when 2 things happened. We were down in London. Our church was the cathedral. The cardinal was Basil Hume, was the cardinal. So while we were there, Sally, who didn't grow up Catholic, decided to convert. One of the best experiences I could ever recommend for any cradle Catholic is to go through RCIA. As some of you see so many things that you didn't realize, and things that you've learned by doing that. So I went through that with Sally, and then it was a Easter vigil, which was at midnight, and so Sally became a Catholic, and then a year later, she became pregnant with Erin, and so Erin was born in London. I don't, you guys may not know this, but at the time that Erin was born, it was at Great Portland Hospital. We're going up in the elevator, and for those who don't know, in the elevator was somebody, I don't know her name, but she was Baby Spice from the Spice Girls. She was in the elevator with us. And we were like, "What are you doing here?" Not that she was asking us, but we were asking her, because we knew who it was. She said, "Oh, the Beckhams they're having their baby today too." So that's when they had Brooklyn, their oldest son, was born there. So we go up. Erin was born on Friday, and the Beckhams were born on the same day. Erin was born naturally. I guess they had a C-section. So I'm going back and forth, and then Sunday it's time to take Erin home for the very first time. And so I go in there, we get everything wrapped up, come out. Paparazzi takes pictures like crazy. So, I'm protective dad, like, "What are you guys doing?" They said, "Well, they thought we were sneaking out the Beckham baby." And the other thing that we learned quickly was that you had to pick which, you want to be American passport or American citizen or a UK British citizen, and so that was an easy choice for us to make. But it was sort of the John Major time period that they changed it to be, you had to pick one or the other. And so we did that. So her birth certificate says born abroad to American parents is how it reads. But, and then we said when she got to be 2, we said, well, we gotta figure out a way back to here. So, and then 9/11 happened. We came back in May of 2021 working on in Long Island, and then all of a sudden the 9/11 happened, and Sarbanes-Oxley, for those who were in the finance, came out, and so being in the finance world, it changed dramatically from working on strategy and growth to, as I called it, covering for the CEO and the CFO's rear end to make sure they stayed out of trouble. So it wasn't fun anymore. So and then plus having been in a division with the brokerage side of it, when 9/11 happened, you spent a lot of time dealing with wakes and all the other stuff that had to go. And one of my brothers, being a fireman, he was a fireman in New Jersey, but he had to go to the site all the time and seeing that, so he'd come home and tell us all those stories, which wasn't fun at all. But it was just time, and I said, let's go figure out what we're gonna do. So we looked at some opportunities. We had a condo in Myrtle Beach, so we said, we could head there and figure out what we're gonna do. But when I first got to college, I was in a management training program for United States Lines, which was a steamship company. And on the first day, they told you where you were going to go, and they said, okay, you're going to Charleston, South Carolina. So I got to learn all about the port here, and loved Charleston. It just took me 20 years to come back. So in 2004, we moved back. I opened up a staffing firm here, and we've been doing well with the firm, but it's been great for that. But at the same time, Erin, getting her into school, she went to Christ our King from 5K on up. And so I started getting involved in the things you do with the school. You're volunteering, you're doing all the things you're supposed to do as a present parent. And suddenly they started saying, oh, how would you like to be on this committee? And you know, especially with Knights of Columbus, there's always a committee to have, right? So join the committee, and the next thing you know, you're on the school board. And then that was going on, and then all of a sudden the principal was going to retire. Now this was the principal that came in after Sister Stella Maris had retired. But this principal had gone to Monsignor Carter and said she was going to retire, and she thinks the school should move to the president principal model, and she said that she thinks that I should be the president. So I'm walking into, at the time it was 6 o'clock mass on Saturday night, and the associate pastor says, oh, Monsignor wants to see you in the sacristy. So I go into the sacristy, and anybody remember Monsignor for anything, right? So Monsignor was Monsignor, right? So there was, the smiles were few and far between. I went in there, he said, look Mrs. Michelle is retiring, she thinks we should go to the president principal model, and she thinks you should be the president. I kind of agree, what do you think? And that was the interview process, that was the entire thing. I didn't feel as if I had a choice to say no, but all I had to do is go back and try to see how I was going to arrange things for the business and all the other stuff, so that would have continuity. And thank goodness for phones, computers, and everything else, so you can do more things than you could. Because I was used to it when I was in London. We had Australia, Hong Kong, or Geneva, all these other places that you had to deal with, so it was kind of used to being multitasking. But there were similarities when we went into the staffing industry and being with the school, because you're impacting people's lives every single day. I always say that the 3 hardest things for someone to deal with is when you're looking for a job, when you're about to get married, and when you're trying to get a mortgage. In all 3 instances, you are fully exposed, right? You're going to try to talk to somebody in an interview, and they're asking you don't know what they're going to ask. You have this, and you're saying, I really need the job, and I need to do it, so you're trying to do all stuff. When you're about to get married, you're trying to join 2 families. You have to go through all the stuff of what my mother-in-law is going to be like, what's this going to be like, or just how are we going to deal with the number of people who are going to come and be at the wedding and get through, well, the parents want to invite these people, and we say, well, what about this one? And we got to sit this person at that table and that person at that table, so it gets very difficult. And when you're going for a mortgage, they're going to ask you for what this $2,000 you spent 16 years ago that came out on a bank statement, right? You have to figure it out. So a lot of it, you're exposed to all those three things. But what owning a staffing firm does, it helps us get people working that for the most part, if they had knocked on that same door, the door wouldn't have been open for them to have to be able to talk to them. So we build a relationship, and then it allows this person to be able, because the company's gonna trust us that we're sending the right person. So we're doing God's work when you do that, because it's important that people are working. When you go to a school, you're trying to make sure that I say we're building, we're setting a foundation that they can take not only for high school, but for eternity as well, because it does us no good to just deal with the academic side of schools. We have to deal with the Catholic culture, the Catholic faith, and making sure that that's all instilled in everybody, and that happens from the very beginning. But just like I said about my parents, it's important that as a school, we're modeling it for these kids as well, so they get to not just hear what the right thing to do, they actually get to see the right things to do. And you mentioned your book. One of the things that I've been fortunate this year that the diocese has asked me to work on a project to go see all the Catholic schools in the diocese and see how they can reach optimal enrollment and to come up with ideas to help them get there. At least half of the schools, independent of each other, have a virtues program in each of the schools. We have Virtues in Education is the one that we use, but it's getting the kids to understand the virtues, seeing what's out there, seeing what they do. We have, in our school, we have shout outs or Christian-like winners, depending on whether you're in the middle school or the lower school. And when anybody is caught performing a virtue, they get recognized for it. So it's bringing that positivity to being able to be virtuous in doing it. And each month is a different virtue that's covered. So I'd love to see your book and be able to see if there's ways that we could make that happen. So see it from a different view, to come to the school and talk about that as well. Knights of Columbus. I've been a member of Knights of Columbus since I was 18 years old. In Elizabeth, New Jersey, Council 253. Everybody knows about the council numbers. If you have a real low number, it's because you've been around for the longest. So we're the 253rd council ever formed. I too, when I was 18, oddly enough, they knew that I was going to college for finance. And next thing I know, I was the treasurer of the, not the council yet. It was the we called it the Columbian Club, because we had a council home. And at the time, they were knocking down an old building and building a new building. So, in today's age, you would say, "Ooh, I'm going to give that job to some 18-year-old." But I want to say, the reason I bring that up, you hear things now that say that the frontal part of the brain is, and for the doctors, just bear me out for a second, isn't formed until like 25 or 26. This is my opinion. I think that formation of it is somewhat societal, in that our life experiences that you've had and the positions you've been in and the things that you've done is helping to formulate that. Because we know it was only 2 generations ago that a third of people went to college, if that, right? So, yet they all went out to the real world. They went into World War II. They went and did all these other things, and they were as adult and fully formed brains as anybody. But we've kind of, it's like we were letting it slide further and further and further, and it's a shame, because we're not allowing kids to develop the coping skills to deal with what needs to do. And I'll bring it up. I mean, we've had a tragedy in Charleston with somebody with a bridge just the other day, a student at the college, and there are lots of reasons for it, but part of it is the parts of which is not helping them cope, because in my opinion, we're making too many decisions for kids, and we're not letting them learn from things as they go along. So that's a difficult topic to cover, but I think it's an important thing to realize that as Catholics who are trying to promote our faith out there, that we have a responsibility to do more than just talk. We have to be there for the kids. We have to be there for the pastors, we have to be there for the schools. I think, you know, there's a quote I've been using for years that say that 68% of people that are in the pews at churches across the country went to Catholic schools. So that means that 68% of the people who are in the day-to-day life of the church, the people that are donating their money, have a Catholic school background, which means to me it's important that we try to make sure we foster that so Catholic schools can continue. I will also say that when I talk about Catholic schools, I will say it's a Catholic school education as opposed to a Catholic education, because you know, in a Catholic school you're going to get your religion class 5 days a week and all of that, while some parishes feel happy that they have a CCD program, but in my opinion, again, it's not the same. It's being in there day in, day out to have that and be able to learn about our faith, learn about being Catholic, learning about the right way to grow up and things like that. So it is important for that. I told you that I'm blessed, and I'm blessed in many ways because of the way I was brought up, the way my parents allowed me to experience things that we would never let our kids today. I grew up in an era where literally a couple of the lines that I will always remember is go out and play in traffic. Right, that we heard that. I can make another one look like you tomorrow, and I could prove if I showed you all my family, it was true. And the other, you know, my mother's famous one was if somebody told you to jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, would you do it too, right? So it's all those things that you have growing up that meant that go and be a kid, go and learn, go and figure out things out for yourself. And if we went down all around town, we're doing stuff, it's like we'd all congregate all the kids would congregate in one place, right? It didn't matter, we'd come from all different parts of town, but we'd congregate in one place, and then we'd all go and do whatever we were going to do. But a lot of times, like if we went down by the river, we weren't in the river, we were in the jungles of Vietnam, right? Because we let our imaginations run as we did these things, so it was important that that was happening. I don't know if imaginations happen much today in the phone, so I think we have to figure out ways to get kids out there, get them out and about, and do what they need to do to be able to be the important people that they need. Sports to me is it is great for kids to be involved in something. When all of us in the business world, we really do work in teams, right? So we have to learn how to get other people to work with us to be able to do that, and that's where they learn that. A lot of that is through sports. So although sports is you know, I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't, but I deal a lot. This is the time of year that basketball is kicking in, and in our school we have 14 different basketball teams, and that means that there are 14 teams worth of parents that are all jockeying. There are 14, no, there's probably 40 dads that all want to be coaches, 40 dads who will tell you that if it wasn't for a stroke of bad luck, they'd be NBA coaches. So it's great if you have one, but if you're dealing with, you know, a dozen of these things right now. So this is a tough time for me to deal with, be happy about these 14 teams, which I think is great, because once it gets past and the season starts, everything is wonderful, but it's what the kids get to learn when the parents are finally out of the situation to do it. But it is a wonderful experience for getting the kids to learn the right way to deal with what they need to do. I will tell you, it was probably easier to be a kid when I was a kid than it is now, because we have more things that we could go and do, and our parents let us do. I think there's a lot of roadblocks for kids today. I told you about Knights of Columbus with the treasurer. Then I became financial secretary, and then I became Grand Knight, and we got the Windstar Council when we were Grand Knight, and then I became a district deputy in New Jersey, and then I got asked to become the New Jersey State Youth Activities Chair for the state, and I was in my second year when I got the call to go to London and live there. So because the council in Elizabeth was so near and dear to me, I've never transferred to a council here, but I still am very active as best as I can be from afar for that council, because I think the Knights of Columbus is a organization that is, it does a lot of the Lord's work in a lot of different ways in a lot of different parts of the world, but it is local at the same time, which is important that everybody's doing the things. My mind works a little strange sometimes when and if someone's in this, I apologize in advance, but whenever I hear that a soup kitchen is giving their report and they're telling somebody that they've fed 30 more people this month more than they did last month, and it's almost like, yay us, I'm saying no. The job is to get you not to have to feed anybody, right? That's what we want to do, is to find the ways to make that go away. So when I think of some things about local, it's about how do we make it so that the things that we're doing actually make a difference. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Echo in Mount Pleasant, but what it is, you know, they will not only do they try to do the hand up as opposed to the handout. If someone's needs help paying their electric bill, they're gonna give them some strategies on how you make sure you can handle those things. I think we need to do more of that. I think that's in our Catholic faith to want to do that, and it's important that we do. Legatus. Legatus is very similar to what the Carolina professionals, the Catholic professionals is. It's the same thing where we're trying to get our faith out there and realizing that it is more than okay to allow people to know that you're Catholic and where we work. But it's also, when you think about it from a CEO level, it's also important to make sure that bleeds down to everybody, that knows that it's a Catholic, you're Catholic, and you're gonna do things that are Catholic, and you're gonna make sure that your company wants to do things that helps the community, does other things that work out of that way as well. When I was looking at the two organizations, because what we do at Legatus, we meet monthly. We start with confessions, and then we have the rosary, and then we have mass, and then we go to dinner, and then we have a guest speaker. So I started thinking, well, this is, you come here, you have lunch, you have the guest speaker. So I think Legatus is the evening version of what you have here. You guys are the lunch group, and Greg can tell the same thing. He's in Legatus as well, but it's very similar in that regard. But the main thing is that our faith. What are we doing with our faith to get it out there, and not do it in we're hiding behind stuff. We're actually outwardly doing it. I've always lived off of the old time song where they'll know we are Christians by our love. I think that's important. I don't think it's, if you think about a business, there are salespeople in a business. There are the steady eddies you need that are going to keep everything going. They don't want to be promoted. They just want to do their thing and move on. And then you have the back office people and that. I think in our faith, in the Catholic faith, we have the same type of thing. We have people who are great at being the outward ones. They're going to be the true evangelists out there who are going to be out there in mass and be able to be loud and proud. And there are others who just are going to be the steady eddies of saying, I'm going to show you what it's like to be a Catholic. Now, I think with evangelization, we have, and I think it's finally starting to get that there. Evangelization has always been thinking about other places, evangelize elsewhere, right? We're going to have missions, we're going to have this. I think the best opportunity we have as the Catholic Church is to evangelize locally for all the people who have walked away from the church. In business world, that's go sell to your clients that you already sold to in the past, right? They know about you, they know it, and they're easier to win back an old client than it's less expensive too than it is to get a new client. I think we just need that mentality in our Catholic faith to be able, and some of that starts in our own families, right? And then you branch out to friends and you just say, you do the things that you need to do to make it that way. And there's not a family out there that doesn't have someone. You have a large enough family, there's always going to be someone who needs to get reeled back in, but they have their their reasons, and we have to try to figure out the ways to help them to come back. I remember it was in New York, they used to have they had a program at times, I think they called it Welcome Home. Welcome everybody back home into the church. I think we need to be willing to do that. I think there is, I will tell you, again, it's my opinion, I think it's important in our Catholic faith that we have, we try to make sure the pilot light is lit in everyone, because that pilot light will go up and down as life goes on for those folks, but you always want the pilot light lit. I know there's a lot of movement that we want everybody to be on fire and all that, let them, that it's great that they should be there, and we could be, but have the pilot light lit so that we can get them there over time to be able to do that. That's gonna come from how they are exposed to it, what, you know, you think about the college campuses here, how that's working so well with the campus Catholics. I think because they're getting those kids at the right age, right? So that's a good time for them. It's also, the Catholic Church is always, folks come back after they got married. They definitely come back after they've had a child. So there's all these things you want to do, and if you know where those are the points, let's find those points and make those be more and more important to us. I think that in my own house with Sally, you know, we do the little things. And funny, the littlest thing that we had gotten away from that we brought back was, and Erin brought it back to us, was saying grace before every meal. And it's such an easy thing that it's so good. And then if for our business, if we ever have we take everybody out to dinner or something, you know, in the restaurant, we're going to say grace there, whether they want to participate or not. That's the way we're going to do it. So I think from a standpoint of the consistency of doing things that are important in our faith, it's great. I love the fact that I'm at a school, a Catholic school. I love the impact that we get to make on the kids. It is amazing to me. You always talked about teachers doing this, but when kids come back to the school and they talk about how that was home for them, for the time they were there, and how it helped them get to where they want to go today, it's important that we see that, and it's important that we get to celebrate that. I was nervous when I heard all the Blessed Sacrament families that are here, because Christ our King and Blessed Sacrament have had some tough wars over the years from a sports perspective. So, it's funny when all those kids go on and get to, for instance, they go to Bishop England, that suddenly they're great friends. And my daughter Erin and your daughter and son are great friends, and it's amazing that stuff will happen. So those wars go away. It's just the wounds don't always go away, but the war kind of ends. I don't know if there's anything, but I guess I kind of want to say to you that I am a product of Elizabeth, New Jersey. I'm a product of a family of 9, and I'm a product of being very Catholic as first as a family. But most of that is because of the modeling that came from my family growing up. And I think that as we take away from this, I think the most important thing we want to do is realize that modeling isn't taking place as much as it needs to be. And I think as a family of Catholics, we need to find the ways to branch out and do more of that. And how, I'm not sure of it, but I do know that a good way that I know from seeing and experience, be able to get that to be in a encapsulated area is through Catholic schools, but it's also making sure that even with those Catholic schools, that's happening in the family first, which makes it a lot easier to do that. So, but to you, Paul, thank you for being Catholic and not being afraid to be Catholic. One thing I was thinking about before, when I first came down here in 1984, the first time, it was odd to be a Catholic in Charleston. You know, you were if I start talking about, talking to somebody, I talk about this brother or this is, then somebody say, "Are you Catholic?" And I say, "Yeah, I had so many kids, right?" And, but I would say that society has changed a little bit, that I believe it's probably harder to be a Catholic now in the Northeast than it is to be down here. And that's an interesting phenomenon, but how do we capitalize on it is going to be the interesting thing as we move forward. I think if you look at a lot of the new things that are happening in the church here, and a lot of the ministries that are happening with the various parishes, I think there's a lot of good that's happening with that. It's just, you and I were talking about how it's hard to find volunteers now, right? We have to find a way to make the number of volunteers needed at a minimum, but yet be able to have the forum for more and more people to come and listen and watch, because I think they'll be much more into it when they know there's not going to be an ask, and there's not going to be that they have to clean up or all these other things. It's just, I think that's just human nature, and then you get them into the fold, and then you can work with it from there. I've taken enough of your time with this. If anybody has any questions or anything they want to talk about, I'm happy to hear, but I also know that everybody's got places to go as well. So, but thank you all for that.
John, thank you. We do have time for a couple more questions.
Okay, if anybody has it.
You talk about the Catholic presence in Catholic schools. Is there we have a lot of our Catholic kids, not that many, but my kids are going to the other Christian schools in the community. Is there an effort, or should there be an effort, to help those kids who are going to this non-Catholic Christian schools?
Yes, what we need to change is the use of the word private school. A lot of people think if they send their kid to a Catholic school, it's going to a private school. When I say that every family in our school is first and foremost, we're a Catholic school, and that's how we're going to always be, and that's the way we're going to concentrate. So if you are a non-Catholic coming to our school, for instance, you're going to go through the same things. You're going to have the prayers throughout the day. You're going to be going to our weekly mass, our school mass. You're going to participate in all the things. The hard thing to defend against is free and keeping up with the Joneses. Those are two things. So if we, one of the things that what I said before was when suburbia happened, they didn't open the schools first. They opened the church first in suburbia. So that broke the line of everybody just knowing you were going to go to a Catholic school. I say all the time, my daughter Erin, she could go to any high school she wanted to in the area as long as it was called Bishop England. That was just the rule. And she agreed with it, and that worked well. So I think this part of that is that I see it all the time when a parent will say to me, well, Johnny, I let him make the decision. Well, no, that's not the way it's supposed to work. While they're still under you need to direct them. And we know from Catholic schools that moms make most of the education decisions for the family, so that's the one target that you want to have. But you have to, as a Catholic school, differentiate yourself from the other Christian schools so that it's out there. A lot of the Christian schools, when I talked about keeping up with the Joneses, they will have a higher tuition, and they feel as if they're getting some. This is the thing, that if I spend more, I must be getting more, and that's not necessarily the effect. So that's where they're trying to keep up with. A friend of theirs went there, so they think that's a good thing. So and yet I will guarantee that those are the same people that are not necessarily going to mass every week with their kids too. So it is hard, but there are more and more variables for people. I will tell you, in Mount Pleasant area, the schools are all new. The high schools, you have Bishop England, but then you have Philip Simmons is brand new. You've got Lucy Beckham is new. You have Wanda, which is like 20 years old, and you have Oceanside. So, and parents are now at the point where they're thinking about how do I get my kid into the college that I want them to do, and they think that some parents would rather go after inflated grade point averages than having the rigors of what would happen, say, at a Bishop England. So they lose sight of that along the way, and they don't. I always say that all the kids from Bishop England that get into the USC or the Clemson Bridge program, I've never seen a kid that did not get into Clemson or USC as a sophomore. That means that they went to the bridge because they said, "No, you're on the waiting list, so to speak." But the fact that they got in was because other kids had to leave. So the kids that had those inflated grades maybe couldn't handle the rigors of college and they drop out, and then so my view from Bishop Bingham is the guidance councils there should go to all of those two universities saying, "We've never lost a kid that didn't matriculate as a sophomore who was from the bridge program." That tells me that take them in as freshmen, and you're gonna be much better off as a college to do that. So I've also said that things that from the Catholic colleges, I've said this for a long time, that I would love to see Bishop Bingham have all the Catholic universities from around the country come in and have a forum where all the kids can go from table to table and learn about the Catholic schools. So it's okay to promote Catholicity as we go throughout all this stuff. But yes, the key of trying to keep those particular parents is to get the mom and show that the Catholic schools has a differentiating self, and the best way to differentiate ourselves is from our Catholic faith side of things.
John, thank you so much.